Hello, welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, an unedited, honest conversation to change the future, actually to create the future. I'm already messing up, but it's an honest, raw, unedited podcast. And my name is Arjan Visser, human-centered futurist, and today's host. And join me as a chat with my friend Ryan Rigterink about authentic leadership transformation. Ryan is a leadership specialist, a tech entrepreneur, and a pioneer for talent ecosystems. He is dedicated to helping leaders in business, higher education, and beyond to build a society where work is personally meaningful and creates higher mutual value. Ryan focuses on building authentic relationships and human centered tools that empower human work even through AI. So, Ryan, thank you for joining me.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
It is a pleasure. It is. It's a long time ago. I was really honored that you were part of our Alt Summit, the Authentic Leadership Transformation Summit in April.
Yeah, it was great to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I was just processing and the footage of the summit, like preparing it for a series of what we call the Alt Summer of 25, which is where we take bits and pieces with the brilliant panel answers to the questions about authentic leadership, and just use that for our podcast stream over the summer. And there was one thing that really triggered me, and I've captured it here. And let me scroll through all my notes. Ryan described three buckets of self-awareness: who we are by design, by experience, and by intentions. And that triggered me. And this was the AI summary of the summit session, and it really triggered me because it starts with who am I, and then you distinct by design, by experience, and by intention, and and all in the context of authentic leadership. So why three, and why are those really important to distinct and to work at in your, I would say, in your self leadership, because it's about self awareness.
Yeah, so we could kind of think of those three buckets, which are three dynamics of what I now call purpose intelligence, which is, if you think of emotional intelligence, most people are aware of that. That's really the what in terms of the emotions and being aware of that. But purpose intelligence and those three buckets or lenses are really about the why. So, why are we good at certain things or enjoy certain things, that we really have a unique design. I believe divine design, that, for kids, they absolutely were all unique and different. And I would never want to compare one to the other, because it's just a misappropriation of who they are uniquely designed to be. And so understanding in terms of self-awareness of who we are by design, I think is a fundamental aspect of self-awareness. And the second piece sort of builds onto that. Who we are by experience is really kind of twofold. It's how other people experience us, and it's also how we experience the world. And so a lot of that comes into our worldview and how we actually there's insights that are available for us in how we experience the world. So, for instance, what bothers me? It could bother me based on something I've gone through that maybe I have drawn conclusions from, but it also something might actually irritate me because I'm actually supposed to be a part of the solution of changing it. And so there's some data we can get into in terms of self-awareness on the experience piece that's then leveraged into who do we want to become by intention. So this is really about really probably what most people think of when it comes to purpose, but future casting and then back casting in terms of what's the future we want to create, what's the impact we want to be a part of, and what's an actual practical plan, although all plans are in pencil, as I like to say. What's the plan to be intentional to pursue that? So that's sort of three lenses about self-awareness and human-centered, I would say, intelligence.
Yeah, I like it. Just listening to you, I tried to create a Venn diagram, and I think there is a different dynamic with him than just the three parts. And although with the three buckets, that my Greek mindset loves that, box, it's the one box or the other. And well, then I hear you explain it about when we are leaders and we live and we lead from the inside out, we need to know what our authority is. And if I imagine a building, it's where the structure of the building supports what's happening in the building, and that has a blueprint. There is an architectural design below it, and I think that is with you when you say by design. It's if we are like a structure, like a building, as a leader, we should use the whole building. We should step into our whole authority, and there is a blueprint behind that. That means that, and I think that's the tension with the last one, by intention, who we are becoming. The intent is not limited by the design, by the blueprint. It is supported by it.
Absolutely.
There's a harmony, there is an alignment in it. So our intent cannot be smaller.
Yeah.
But our intent should also not be beyond. And that's not a limitation. It's a whole discussion, and we have been speaking a lot with Ben Street, who's also been on the podcast, and who always says, it's your boundaries. Know your boundaries. And that's not just the safety, it's also the reach of your impact, your authority, your influence. And not to confuse it with limitations, because they are the hurdles that you actually just use to step up.
Mm-hmm.
And in that perspective, and then you have the experience. And that makes me think back of a podcast I did a while back with Pete, Coach Pete from New York, who said, there is this theory, you can become whoever you want to be. He said, that's a theory that's out there. He said, and that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And which I challenged, because I think you can become everyone who you desire and intend to be, because that should be in alignment and harmony with your blueprint.
Yeah.
But so we said the same, and it sounded so opposite, because the experience, by experience, that third or the middle one you mentioned, because by experience, you need to understand who you are amidst the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because else we get, let's just call it, you start to live with an identity fantasy,
right,
to meet cultural expectations. You get the hero journey syndrome, that you want to be, but then we all will walk with our underwear on the outside. We all want to become Superman. And that's where we miss the intent, because then it's the cultural external expectation that defines what is expected from us, and then you're not in line with your design. So whole unpacking of what you just said, but
yeah, I think what you're highlighting in that last part is the need for it to be authentic, right? We can try and be somebody else, and that's just that's a tragedy. And a lot of people, we've probably all done that, right? Trying to be trying on different personalities, trying on different communications, and trying on different destinations that simply aren't the right fit. And so it's really, those three lenses are about alignment. When those three get into alignment is where I think acceleration happens, breakthrough happens, and ultimately joy, satisfaction, impact, all those, it's almost like, I don't know if this is the right analogy, but almost like how light beams have to be reflected back and forth to create the concentration for a laser. There's like an amplification that happens when those three are in alignment, and there's sort of a diffraction or a fragmentation of that, of friction or interference, if you want to call it that, when even one of those three is sort of out of joint.
And that's a very fascinating dimension, because now it's not just work with the three areas of your self-awareness. Now you work with the dynamic and the relationship within those three areas. And it's actually a human-centered approach. You mentioned that word already, because it's in a relational setting. But there are parts of you that needs to work in a relational setting, like your purpose only works when you work in relationship with the right other people. So it's that mini scale kind of dynamic that we normally see. Maybe we love to see between big teams, but it's also like how they work inside of you, and they should not be competing. They also should not be in harmony. That they are in this motion movement tension.
Yeah, I think of it more of, and this is a relational context, but it's more like a map than trying to twist something into a certain form. It's the reason you have the map is to navigate, right? It's a relationship with the map helps the relationship with the real world, and so it's in that light that I think of it, that it's, I can have a relationship with my own personality, which has strengths and weaknesses, and understanding what those are and when I need to, buffer or adjust, or where those things can be fully expressed. And same thing, I have a relationship with vision. I have a relationship with my own, internal world. So it's just like I have a relationship with people. All these things are relational fundamentally in how we show up.
Yeah. I love it. You mentioned purpose intelligence, which I think that connects to that. It's the relationship, because how you use the lenses is the relationship you have with the areas. Like a lens is kind of a relationship. So refining or reinventing your relationship on I would say on an interval of time is just part of that development, that experience.
Yeah.
Because
To your point, we can in all of those unique relationships, we can mature, right? We can go from one state to another, and our capacity can grow in all of that. And so it's not unlike raising kids in that regard, except they're all parts of ourselves. I can be really mature in my relationship to one area, and I can be, less mature in another. So I think it's, again, another relational lens on this, but it's about maturity, and not necessarily an end destination, but it's, that's a piece of it. So,
well, you mentioned purpose intelligence, human intelligence, and without going too technical, because it's not just it is all about language, but it's not about just classification, taxonomy, and all those. That's not what we want to talk about. But you triggered something in our pre-talk when we talked about human intelligence, and years ago we were part of a tryout run for the first ever spiritual intelligence training from California back then. And so how do you describe purpose intelligence? How do you describe purpose?
I describe purpose as an already not yet. But I normally talk about purpose in pictorial or language, and so it's you and your mastermind are very much about language and creating the language of the future. And I think in a lot of ways that's trying on versions of gaining cycles of iteration and data on what our purpose is and finding the right linguistic pathway to help partner with that. And so I think purpose is also partnering with a promise in that sense. Like our design and what we are born with, or even is unique to us in utero, honestly, is in seed form, and it's stewardship. It's stewardship of who we are. It's stewardship of how we are showing up, how we're managing ourselves, how we're managing our relationships with others, and ultimately impact. And so, I mean, those are some thoughts. I don't have just, I guess, one version of purpose. I think it's multidimensional, not unlike your diamond there, that it shows up in different ways. And even if you look in the definition of purpose, there's actually a number of different Greek and Hebrew definitions. And so I think it's multidimensional.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned already, like purpose, of course, you can bring purpose down to goal. And you can use it as a classification metrics to define what's meaningful and not. And in everything is really contributing to where you are going, it becomes purposeful. I like the definition that it's actually my reach. It's my metron, because some people say sphere of influence, but it's more, because it includes my impact, it includes my authority, it includes my accountability, my responsibility, and my self leadership. In that, it's to reach my ripple effect of me being me and me becoming me.
Yeah, and I would add to that Metron in the sense of scope and location, right? So your Metron is even multidimensional in that sense too.
And that makes it immediately relational, because all those things are in relationship to others. Even when it is in relationship with me, it's a human connection in that sense. And it is extending. And you mentioned the mastermind. I love to see, like, the more you become, the more your purpose can extend. And both need to grow. So the more of you has a wider reach of positive influence, positive effect, beneficial effect on others. But you add the word intelligence to it. And I'm still trying to find, and maybe it was you, I tried to find who said that to me a few months ago. The moment we put intelligence after the word, it's the ego spectrum and not the ecosystem. Because
interesting.
We add to it, before we know, a metric to measure it, and our ego is all brings everything bound to performance. And so,
well, that's seen through the ruling paradigm of our day, but it's not the only paradigm or lens for that. So yeah,
and it's not what you took. So what do you mean with intelligence when it's not just a performance metric?
Yeah. So so first off, you bring up one of the ruling paradigms of the last 50 to 100 years. Performance is a specific lens that we optimize for. We optimize for efficiency and performance. That's what the business world's been taught since Taylorism and Henry Ford, right? So it's important to first recognize, just to take a step back, we've optimized for certain things within the business world, and we've not necessarily optimized for purpose or shared purpose. And so, that's why that's the first thing that comes to mind, because that's what the ruling lens of today is that we look through. But when I say purpose intelligence, it's onto becoming, it's onto fulfillment, satisfaction, wellness, impact. All those are, you could call those performance, but they're not, in the sense that performance is seen as an outcome, and oftentimes these things are a journey, and not only a destination. And so it's more inclusive, and it's more holistic, and it's more both now and later from a time element. And so it's less reductive than performance. And so really it's about, when I say intelligence, I just mean the data itself. I think the performance piece is a paradigm about the relationship that we have with that data and how we're using it. In the same way we could use data so I've got a model I've taught that's got 5 phases, anywhere from extractive to regenerative. So one is very healthy and holistic and mutually beneficial, and the other is very asymmetrical and extractive and leads to burnout and toxicity. In terms of, those are relationships, and so we can use the same data and have a different relationship with it. And so when I say intelligence, it's not reflective of the relationship. That's sort of in my mind, a separate piece. It's just merely the data. And then the next logical thing is, how are we going to relate to that data and use it? Is it going to be a head heavy, performance leaning, extractive approach, or is it going to be a holistic, how can we partner, collaborate, create mutual benefit, and elevate everybody in the process? And that's more regenerative.
Yeah. Well, nowadays we talk a lot about AI. We talk about human intelligence. Already heard people reduce human intelligence to generative AI, which I believe is a big mistake, because then we lose the power of a word. And we talked many times about spiritual intelligence in our one-on-ones and in previous podcasts. But when I think about the relationship and human-centered, I think about that one of your buckets is the experience. It's experience to just explore what could be purposeful for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is transformation. So it's a lasting change. Not just a fun ride or a hard ride. No, it's a lasting change. And those two things, although we try to bring that back to performance, of course, because then we can outsource it, I think they make us deeply human. To be about experience, around our identity. You already said, well, that is connected to your design, your blueprint, and it is connected to becoming the fullest version of yourself, your future self, which is actually then the manifestation of your blueprint. The whole experience, the human intelligence, that seems like something that's quite new, because society, humanity have mainly been focusing on, like you mentioned, Taylor and Ford, and the performance process lens to life. But now we know that there is a human lens to life, which is about purpose, discernment, wisdom. Like another Hebrew word for discernment is actually finding purpose. So in that sense, it's all about life. It's about life giving.
Yeah.
And I believe with AI, it sets us free to focus on what makes us so deeply human, which is relationship, experience, and transformation. How would you elaborate on that dynamic? AI, human intelligence, purpose intelligence.
So AI, I would relate to that. So AI is very there's an input and there's an output, and so the old expression "garbage in, garbage out." It's very true with AI. I would say the technology itself and how it operates, but then also how it's implemented. So how we integrate it into our company and our organization. Really, it's an amplifier. It's an amplifier of whatever the I would call the ruling paradigm is. And so if I'm trying to use it in an extractive way to maximize output, that's one use. If I'm trying to leverage it to empower people to maximize their time and leave more time for some of the other aspects, that's another use. And so I think it's an amplifier, similar to how culture is an amplifier. It's when we went to remote work, that was amplified, where you saw CEOs come out with very, very different perspectives on it. And certainly there's a difference based on the business and the needs of the business and their business model and whatnot. But it was also an example of amplifying something that existed before. And so if you had a really unhealthy culture before remote work, then that was sort of exposed and amplified. If you had a really healthy culture, then that was also amplified. And so there was a celebration of the freedom and what was possible. And so I think AI is similar in that regard, where it amplifies what's already existing and takes it further in one direction or the other. And so I think AI is already doing that in some respects and will continue to. And I think what I'm excited about with AI is the opportunity for it to elevate the importance of creativity, of agency, and hopefully be a contributing factor to a renaissance that will likely come after.
Yeah, I see that as well. And listening to you, is that micromanagement that we don't want to be applied from one human being to the other human being, but the micromanagement we need to apply on any tool.
Yeah, it's just, at the end of the day, it's a tool. The same knife that murders is the scalpel that saves a life, right? And so it's, at the end of the day, it's a tool.
Yeah, and then I think what you describe with the self-awareness, the lens, the contextual part, the relationship, how it relates to other things. Our brain has the unique thing that it can switch lanes randomly, and we call it then lateral thinking. And we love to engage that in creative solutions that are really out of the box. AI can support you in that if you micromanage it that way. If you don't micromanage it, it falls back to the default paradigm lens of its maker. And that is, I think, whoever want to hear it, I always say, never ask AI a question. Craft a prompt. Talk about the input, the output, the experience, the transformation, the thinking, the upgrade, the step up, maturity. All those things we say, the attributes of leadership. Exactly. Draft that content and discern if you like the output or not. It actually means it demands maturity of who we are becoming, and what experience is purposeful or not. So all those buckets of self-awareness, they sound to me like that is a really good start to micromanagement, the outsourcing of content processing to AI. And I've got people will listen who say AI is way more than that. I know generative AI is way more than that. But if generative AI is not managed, then it will be just following one pattern. It will not, you refer to diamond, it will not flip sides. It will not use different facets unless it's told in its code or by the prompt. So it's the same knife you mentioned. That is the scalpel of an artist and the weapon of a murderer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a huge opportunity for us as humans, as self-leaders, as leaders, to really take serious that we need to think for ourselves. We need to increase our self-awareness. We need to minimize our blind spot. And then we can outsource things.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is we need significant wisdom in the process, right? So for some of these things that need governance, need to be thinking about the output or the end result of, we need to be looking at some of these things with greater depth in terms of their potential impact and how we actually want it to show up in our world versus that just being decided by a handful of technologists that's may or may not have everyone's best interest in mind.
Yeah, it's that old thing. Do we have a few decide for the rest? Or are we all involved in the decision-making process? And we can't be in a room with millions, billions of people. So then we get smaller scale. But that's also not a new thing. That's literally as old as humanity. So closing remark from your end or summary. What's the big takeaway before we enter the summer to really ponder, chew on?
I think conscious, authentic leadership is never been more in need, and especially as the systems of this world are being broken down and or rebuilt, and new technologies in terms of computational power and AI and genomics and all of the things are emerging and becoming available, that we need some real wisdom to think about the world we're creating before we do it. So that would be my my biggest takeaway for the day that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah, I second that. I echo that. I truly believe the world is getting, and that comes and goes by cycles, but the world is currently increasing in complexity, which is a cycle. And what we learn from history and also from the people that we know and remember through history, those people knew who they were becoming, and were self-aware what the thing was they were called to do. And I think if you want to go, complexity is the same thing as going deep, you need to know where.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's simple, you can be in many places at the same time. So that future identity, that recalibration to purpose, to become purpose intelligent, be self-aware of your context, your relationships with yourself and with others, is not a thing on the side. It is the core of you being in control, I would nearly say, about who you are becoming, who you relate with, who you have positive impact on, who you want to be a blessing to.
Yep, 100%.
So on that heavy note, we need months to recover from it. On that heavy note, I really want to invite anyone to just connect with us. Leave your comments, react to the podcast, ask your questions that we triggered find someone, find us to have a conversation with, but mainly like let us know what questions about authentic leadership you really appreciate and want to go deeper to. Maybe be part of a podcast yourself. But also I want to extend that to the invitation of the ALT Forum, the Authentic Leadership Transformation Forum, which is a place for leaders, forerunners, creatives that are really aware that they are changing and they need to be provoked in their thinking. They need to share deep thoughts. They don't want to have it just their inner dialogue, just in their head. They need peers because they find they sense some kind of a awakening in their spirit about their blueprint, about their experience, about their future identity. Then I really invite you to just experience it yourself and join us at the Alt Forum. Just go to the link that is visual in the screen, which is alt.businessrevivalist.com/forum, and just experience it. Join the conversation. Food for thought and thought provoking. That's what we need to support each other with. Ryan, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me on, and I encourage you to definitely join. It's a great group of people, and it's a transformative process. So huge value there. So
thank you. Have a great summer. Looking forward to, not connect. We stay connected throughout the summer, but meet you also in this space again soon.
Yes, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite.
Thanks. Bye.